And as we are loaded in to Glittering Ashes, he is in the red. He's Maru. Rockin' NV.
In the bottom left, repping BIG, he is ShoWTimE. Glittering Ashes, once again, does seem to be an okay map. I mean, we looked at it when it first got announced, saw that it was just gigantic. It had some defensive properties as well. I was kind of worried about the amount of turtling that could happen on this map, but it's actually not been that bad. And to consider with the way that Maru usually is known for playing here, he is actually kind of hiding a barracks, hoping to kind of freak ShoWTimE out. But we do expect him to be aggressive, even on the larger maps. But I'm actually feeling like ShoWTimE might be, feeling all right, feeling okay. He has been performing better and better throughout the year. That's why he's here in the season finals. And he has gotten recently quite a bit of practice against someone who might be a little Maru-esque, and that is Byun. I think the last 5 Terrans he played, Green Terrans he played, was actually Byun, like very recently. So at least he's a little bit warmed up in that regard.
Yeah, and when you do prepare for a player like Maru, it has to be said that you need to have a specific thought process. Okay, if I go in and I don't see a barracks, it's Maru. He's totally one of the players that could cheese me, bring out something super aggressive. So I like that Maru kind of playing to that with the barracks on the outside, but not necessarily proxied. Of course, he starts the factory in the main base. So for ShoWTimE, he's thinking, okay, maybe it's one proxy Reaper, and it's not a proxy Reaper. It's just going to be a normal Reaper. So he's not going to have that pressure coming towards him. He went for Cybernetics Core before Nexus, but that's not really that weird in this matchup either. I do. Okay, Maru really wants to sell that this is going to be some crazy aggressive build, though.
Huh. I'm actually a little surprised by the Stalker coming out first. But it is going to hopefully come out in time to actually stop this bunker. No probes. Just no probes at all being pulled into this. I'm actually surprised he's going to let this bunker finish. See, they will finish.
Yeah, that's weird. You'd think that once the Reaper goes inside of the main base and goes after the probe, you'd be like, okay, well, there shouldn't really be anything here to defend against this, but I'm kind of with you on that, Zombie Grub. I guess with where the pylon and the Nexus is, Maru was prepared to do a lot of tappy toes in and out of building it so that it could just keep moving around and avoiding the probe, since they'd have to go completely around even where the pylon is. But
yeah,
I mean, he basically faked him out, or tried to. I'm not even going to say faked him out because he didn't even pull probes, and just kind of costs himself 25 minerals in that SCV.
It really wasn't that bad. There's been some snowball effects with that bunker, because if it does finish, it's where the shield batteries would go to defend against a bunker that's behind the mineral line, which is usually the sneakier version, right? But then with it just right in your face, you can actually stop the probe from coming in. Didn't really matter so much there. Double Stalker providing enough damage. No SV to actually get the repair also was significant. So even though I thought ShoWTimE was going to at least zap the SCV twice and then only 3-shot instead of 4-shot with a Stalker, I think the results are pretty much the same. So a little bit of pressure being applied in the early game, but it's not about the initial Reapers, really, so much as it is about Maru trying to keep up the pressure. So first Reaper survived, comes in, then dies, gets the scout, sees that it was a Robo. Yeah, saw the Robo. And then we have our first Widow Mine drop already on the way. It's the only thing on the map, though, so ShoWTimE should not have that much trouble with this.
Yeah, he's got a good amount of Stalkers out, depending on which direction the Observer is going to go in. I don't think it's going to see this medevac. No, it's headed straight across. He wants information. Maru's going to follow this up with a Raven, but this is always one of those crucial moments that we talk about. You can have all of the right units in the right place, but if those Widow Mines are able to just get right in the right spot, you don't pull those probes quite fast enough, we know they can be devastating. You can deal game-ending amounts of damage in the first few moments, but look at that. Goes straight into the Assimilator, not even able to get a single probe kill, and he's going to force it over here while ShoWTimE is still focused on dealing with it. Now the probes almost, but not quite. Does get 2 of them. And of course, one of the other things that we've constantly been talking about with this map pool, you've had a lot of space to kind of hide those medevacs and stuff behind the bases. So I don't know if I would have hated him. Sometimes you keep it there with the first couple mines and you wait for the follow-up attack and then you send it back in later down the line.
Sounds interesting. Yeah, I was gonna.
Okay.
Yeah, I was wondering if he was gonna do a tank Banshee attack, right? Kind of through the middle, or you distract with the Banshees and then you push with the tanks. But I was actually not really on board with it. So, not that I'm cheering for either player, guys. Totally unbiased.
Oh
I
my
swear.
God,
I am
Zombie
glad he
Grub.
went to the Liberator.
Zombie Grub, Terrans repairing their units. This is, I feel like I'm in a fever dream. That's what I love to see. He knows that he's not going to be able to do that mine drop without having it be able to take a couple more hits from the Stalkers. So good heads-up play. He's going to try and get that mine drop in probably while he goes for the siege that you're talking about. And the Colossus will be out, but the Raven interference matrix, that's something that we always have to keep our eyes on, because without a warp prism to try and dodge that with, you can shut it down. That'll help the Marines protect the tanks. And if these couple of tanks are able to siege on this, things can get dicey. The Twilight Council is only just finishing. We don't have Blink. We don't have Charge.
Oh, no.
So there's no easy way to get on top of that. And the mine now is pulling everything towards the natural to make it easier for Maru to siege up. And now the medevac can go support and keep these Marines alive.
I guess there wasn't really enough force field to actually stop this push anyways, but being pulled entirely out of position, it just was already a bad start. There really wasn't anything that ShoWTimE could do on the forward defense, if you will, where you buy some time by making them siege up tanks and you take a couple of swipes. You want to do that, then pull back to your third base. That is the ideal way to handle a push like this. But ShoWTimE, not able to do that, just has to give up his third, because trying to defend it and still losing it would have been the worst of the two outcomes here. I'm glad it at least saves his army, but he restarts his third base at the triangle third now. And at least he didn't lose many probes from this Liberator.
Yeah, Liberator just has a single kill. But as we were saying, I mean, it's free real estate behind that main base. You've got a huge amount of area to work with. So he will keep that Liberator on the harass, as we were talking about that mine drop earlier. But Charge is coming in, so at least I'll have a little bit of a better answer for the siege tanks, so that the Colossi can actually shoot the Marines. And he might actually run into these reinforcing tanks.
Yeah, it's funny because tanks don't really die that fast to this army. It's like 2 sentries and 2 Colossus, and the Zealots should never reach them, right? So, unfortunately, just 200 gas down the drain as the sentries, I mean, they wanted the tanks, but instead got blasted by the other 2 that were still alive. Of course, Maru getting that third Nexus for free, just kind of kept his units there, and now ShoWTimE, I don't think this is a very comfortable game for him, unfortunately. I'm not sure in any other situation he would have made the move to go across the map knowing that Maru's army was on here, but maybe hoping to do some damage, then recall, maybe even get a kill on the Raven if Maru's not paying attention. But no, it's actually just ShoWTimE kind of waiting in limbo. I mean, what is he actually planning here?
It's such a powerless feeling. Yeah, now he just goes for the recall. That third command center was not built on location. The observer saw the SCV, but he was maybe hoping to just catch a tiny dub and then recall back. But now he is going to be able to flank using that recall from the third base. The Raven, I think here you go for the auto turrets because they're going to help keep the Zealots away. I think he could have dropped those turrets a little bit faster in front of the tanks. So ShoWTimE's going to be able to clean that up, but still lost a pretty tremendous amount of probes to make that happen, Zombie Grub.
Yeah, 16 probes went down. That is truly unfortunate, because otherwise that was actually a very good situation just with the surrounds that he was able to siege up. Even though I still don't think this is a comfortable game for him, it wasn't a comfortable game, he is still able to think things through clearly and concisely, and the charge that's coming from all directions was the right call. He just already took so much damage, of course, on top of losing that third Nexus. If he could grab one of these medevacs, that would be so nice. And actually, Maru kind of pulled back into the Stalkers there, lets one of them die significantly, takes away from the power of the drop, but this Liberator still being such a pain. It's got 6 kills. It may not sound that impressive, but on top of everything else that has happened this game, ShoWTimE is just not really getting time to breathe.
Yeah, the worker count seems close, but then we remind ourselves, mules raining from the sky, taking all the minerals, so that income has to be feeling pretty nice for Maru. Even though the third base is up for ShoWTimE, he just doesn't have the probes to completely saturate and take advantage of that versus those orbital called down mining units. So drops a couple of these medevacs, or these Marines and Marauders on the natural. Without the Colossi here, killing the Stalkers is huge. Once that Stalker count gets low enough and the medevac pulls back, you're kind of just making it impossible to deal with this harass. And I love that Maru still keeps the Liberator sieged on the edge, just outside of range of the Stalkers, because if he wants to drop his bio there and Zealots charge on, it'll at least be able to help peel those.
And there is an attack attempt on ShoWTimE's new third, but he has been doing one thing very well, and that's leaving portions of his army across the map. Now, this can always be tricky for a Protoss as the game does go on. Maru's been pretty happy with his economy as he's still up in workers. That's really big. Third to see on the way. Eventually, Maru just gets to a ton of units, and he can either go for the drops, which ShoWTimE is pretty well defended against, or one big attack up to the third or natural. And if ShoWTimE's still split, in that situation, then he just simply gets overwhelmed. So the very, very difficult part of this game for ShoWTimE is accurately working out how Maru is going to play the mid game. Is he going for one big attack, or am I going to have to deal with a lot of drops? We see ghosts, we see upgrades. I think Maru more so on the main attack. Once these couple of drops have been cleared up, it looks like the Observer is going to be chased down, so he's not...
Noise.
Turret. He's not going to know exactly where the attack's coming in.
It's like sometimes you go, wow, is the auto turret really worth the Observer? And sometimes just as the power move, that's like it's the FU turret. You're like, I'm going to drop that because you're thinking, oh, I did it, I got away. No, you didn't. Crush the hopes, crush the dreams. But I will say this, ShoWTimE getting that extra base set up, like you were talking about, he's been doing a really good job of keeping his units spread out. He hasn't crumbled. His supply is still looking very nice. His army supply keeping pace with Maru, despite all of the worker hits that he's taken throughout this game. A lesser man, I think, is already dead against a Terran of his caliber.
Absolutely, because at some point during the Liberator harassment, Widowmine harassment, loss of the third Nexus, at some point, worse Protosses would have just freaked out. They would have just been like, I don't know what I'm doing, and then they would have tried overcommitting in some regard and then just tapped out of the game. But ShoWTimE has been playing kind of to just like take the blows and deal with it style of play, which it's still not put him in the very best of positions, totally on the defensive, never having gotten across the map to do anything to Maru, but it is one that has kept him alive and still with a chance, especially as we get to, I think, a more comfortable position for any Protoss player where they have a good deal of splash units, so Colossus and Disruptors, and then perhaps a Warp Prism also could finally be employed with even a Dark Shrine. If you can get a fourth base up and saturated, then ShoWTimE can afford all these things.
That just needs to continue to push that economy forward. Maru did take his sweet time getting to that third base like we were discussing earlier, so wasn't jumping quite ahead economically as maybe we were concerned about earlier. Going to get for the Dark Shrine. However, 2-2 is done for Maru, and this is where he's going to try and really keep pushing this. If you're ShoWTimE, you can't leave your base. You know he's going to just dive on you the absolute moment that he gets the opportunity. That's how Maru plays. And he's trying to find a nice grab here, but I feel like this army composition from ShoWTimE is pretty well rounded. He's trying to grab this one Colossus. Might need to bring the rest of the army over. There's the Disruptors. One shot's going to land on 3 Marauders. Nice pickup. Second one is killed before the Nova can detonate. And the Zealots are going to eat a couple of these mine shots, pushing the bio out. Disruptor shot goes back to catch one of those mines. But ShoWTimE, he routes this push. He's going to be able to get a couple of pickups chasing on the way back and lives to fight another day.
I wonder if that was actually a bit sneaky. I was worried that ShoWTimE didn't realize that was all of Maru's army and he was making the mistake I was talking about, but it actually looked like he intentionally almost wanted to bait Maru to dive on top of the natural, being like, oh, it's a Colossus, let's go grab it. And they would have come from behind with the Disruptor. It didn't work out perfectly, which is why I'm still suspicious if that was truly the move, but it could have been really cool. Now we have ShoWTimE still down in supply. Actually, Stalkers get caught in the middle very awkwardly, but he was able to keep all these expensive, slow-building units alive. Still has 3 Colossus, now 4 Disruptors replacing those Stalkers, and he's working his way up to the Dark Shrine and the Warp Prism. I feel like that is going to be where the momentum can shift, is if ShoWTimE can get the Warp Prism on the other side of the map, but he's still under so much pressure.
Yeah, Maru's not going to give him time of day. I'm like, that's a pretty aggressive stim to make, though. 3 Colossi is going to hit him with the anti-armor missile. It's going to make the rest of these units very fragile towards these attacks. I mean, wow, if you get hit by anti-armor missile and EMPs, then you're going to start to become sour about life. But with 4 Disruptors anchoring, and now 5, he does at least have some ability to say, okay, you can't just come in and try to dive me. Otherwise, I have that AoE splash. I can blow you up. Now he's going to try and partition off a portion of this force towards the north and continue to use the Disruptors to clear out the Widow Mines, not getting caught between. This is an important moment right now. ShoWTimE, how is he going to react? The EMP comes in on the battery and the cannon. Zealots, as they're being warped in, are going to get picked off. The Ghosts do bonus damage to those, but he does have a cheeky Dark Templar in there. Assassinates one of these Ghosts, so he's doing everything that he can, but EMP, of course, is going to reveal that as well. Now hitting the Southeast Nexus that just finished, and this is where you start to struggle a bit. You're trying to cover more area of the map. You're trying to get that 5th base. You're protecting multiple different fronts that are no longer just a screen away. And Maru able to get some nice economic damage in again.
There's a couple problems. Actually almost getting split up there. ShoWTimE is still going to be able to max out. I think giving up that Nexus is something that he could have done. Giving up this one, though, too, is actually quite painful and cancel. But I was going to say, ShoWTimE has 1 observer, so that's why he's been using his disruptors the way that he has. But it also hasn't moved from guarding all of the disruptors get found out. Only one's going to pop off, although it does get a juicy hit. DT is actually hitting, so hold on to my point for a second. DT's going on top of the tanks that are left behind to help deal with this type of harassment. Another disruptor's going to come out, maybe save this army. Pretty good shot in the middle, and Colossus still anchoring to help out. No, going to be focus fire down. Where is ShoWTimE's army? There it is now, coming to clean this up, and ShoWTimE taking a supply lead as the tanks went down, as well as 21 SCVs. And the 1 DT, it does finally get cleaned up. That was the momentum shift that I was talking about. Now ShoWTimE getting to be actually like breathe a sigh of relief as the army is no longer on his side of the map.
Tries to blink that DT a little bit further outside where that scan range might have been, but could not escape. And I think that's a great way to put it. Zombie Grub, a little bit of a momentum shift, gets a huge amount of the SCVs killed. And, you know, at this point you might say lol mule, but the scans become important when you're using this many Dark Templar. There's a Raven with the army, but controlling that is tricky. It makes me yearn a little bit for a high Templar mix-up. You know, either working a little bit of Storm or just for the feedback. There's this mine. It's going to get maybe a little bit on the other way out. Planetary Fortress is done just in time for the army of ShoWTimE to reach this base. And I think with the Planetary anchoring the Vikings, it's a bit difficult to try and make a big move up. But he just kind of walks past all those DTs. We'll see what they're able to get done as he approaches the Southeast Nexus once more. So this base gets denied again. Is he just going to right-click on the PF? There we go. 1, 2.
Still good enough that looks at things. I was going to say, if there was maybe an instant repair, there was maybe 1 or 2 less DTs than usual, but he actually gets the Planetary, so an actual base trade, base for a base there. As the ASCVs also go down, the DT is still alive. It's a little bit more threatening over on this side. ShoWTimE also is no longer just putting all his eggs in that bottom right Nexus basket. He's actually trying to either choose left or right. More DTs do get cleaned up, as that is certainly worth the cleanup. They're very, very expensive. ShoWTimE is not rolling in the dough. And now things have reset again, but I just want to finally end my point about this 1 observer, guys. Like, there's no observer with the main army, so that's always a bit concerning. Also means no observers out in the middle of the map. The 1 observer that he does have is now in kind of a useless scouting position. I would love for him to reposition it. As we get into these very, very large-scale games on Glittering Ashes, the scouting is going to be extremely important. I mean, hell, it's the reason that we've seen these Nexus canceled or killed so many times, is that ShoWTimE is always just a couple seconds away from reacting, and now the disruptors get found out again. All the disruptors going for the shots. 1 of them does hit, but so many disruptors went down. Another one from the backside also could be targeted. ShoWTimE is looking for the hit, and he couldn't find enough time. Now the rest of the army has to come in and hopefully once again save the day, but no, the Nexus killed, and Maru is going to be fine with that. He's going to pull back and handle this little Zealot run by as well.
I really like the Planetary Fortress snipe, and then when he kind of moved towards the other base, he got that Widow Mine, but I think if ShoWTimE pulls those DTs back and retains them, and he's able to go back in again when it's not a Planetary and just an Orbital, wait for that to land, wait for the SCVs to move in there. But I feel like the gas starts to become a bit of a problem because he's doing a decent job trying to build this army, but all these mines in the back, he never did get vision of them. They're only get a couple big hits. You were saying it, Jazz, the only observer that we had was just perched in the dead airspace between the outside bases.
Yeah, there's not, I mean, this game has been a lot of action, so it clearly is just ShoWTimE not getting around to really doing everything as he's trying to defend and keep his disruptor count up and actually high. It's not high much longer. A couple more get sniped. 1 on the front line also going to go down. Disruptors are really, I think, the key to bringing this back here. As ShoWTimE now down 30 supplies, still has 3 disruptors. That one gets a bit of a shot and looks like the remains of the army for the Terran might just get cleaned up, but I think the damage has been done overall. Maru's been taking down so many Nexus, now taking some of these trades in the main engagements with better upgrades. It feels like ShoWTimE was able to punch back for a little while in this game, but has mostly run out of steam.
He got himself into a pretty good economic position, but the problem is eventually that main base, that natural, they dry out, and Maru is able to outlast ShoWTimE in this first game. GG. But perhaps a bit more of a fight than he was expecting. ShoWTimE really took it to him there, and I really do feel it boils down to he had some great harass, he got some great damage in, but every time he went for it, he lost all those DTs, and I don't know what the exact number was at the end of that game, but I'm guessing it was somewhere north of 15. Dark Templar, awesome, super badass, very expensive.
Yes, very expensive. So until you're rolling in the dough, until you have 6 Nexus and 80 probes, those hit squads are dangerously expensive, and we've even seen ShoWTimE in the past. I don't know if it was versus Maru or maybe Innovation or a TY. He's actually gone over some of the replays of previous events where he faces these Korean Terrans. And one of the big things that he noted was that I just, at some point, I feel a little too overconfident. I have a bit too much in the bank. I put it on DTs, and then I lose them continuously. I can't save them. So I think it's something that he's usually very attentive to. And these games we're going to see, this one and probably the next couple, as we move on to 2,000 atmospheres, I think it's going to be a major point. If he can survive to the mid game, if he can actually utilize those DTs and retain them, similar to the way he retains a lot of these robo units in the first 15 minutes, then that's maybe we see ShoWTimE taking a victory. But without it, without that counter pressure, it was all Maru on his side of the map, let's say for 70% of this game, and only 30% of the time for ShoWTimE on Maru's side.
And this, of course, was another devastating moment. Trying to split the army as a Protoss player is never easy because if you keep your whole army in one spot, yes, it's strong, but Bio moves fast, and
Yep.
4 Marauders and 8 Marines will kill a base in about 7 seconds. So you either have to have everything pre-split, or you have to make those on-the-fly adjustments. And trying to shift 5 disruptors with no chaperones is a very dangerous thing to do on Glittering Ashes.
You need to get those parents in here and chaperone.
Right, you need get the permission slip before you send your disruptors to the 5th base, because they might run into some Marines and Marauders while they're going up a ramp, or eat a couple Widowmine shots, which also pretty devastating. I think another very important thing to point out, like you were saying, is very little observer action. Partially maybe because the Raven and Viking combo, great.
That's true.
Maru did a pretty good job keeping the Raven alive. It usually doesn't last quite that long in TVPs.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think not only is it a matter of the Robo being probably the most important structure, obviously gateways and all that are important too, but just you are consistently pumping out Colossus and Disruptors in games like these, especially the Disruptors, so you don't really have a lot of time to go over just willy-nilly into 5 observers. But yeah, you probably figured at some point they're going to get taken out anyways. But I think you said it in the beginning of this in-between segment, which is that Maru probably was a little surprised by how much ShoWTimE was able to hold on. I think that has to do not just with the player, but with the game starting out like it did. ShoWTimE was on the back foot immediately, but he still was able to throw a few punches.
Yeah, and great tenacious play, of course. In the bottom left here on 2,000 Atmospheres, we have the Red Terran leading 1-0. He is Maru.
Doing Maru things. Playing out in LCV. In the top right for BIG, he is ShoWTimE.
Well, how many players can say that they survive a multi-prong onslaught for 3 or 4 minutes at the start of a PVT like that? Gets his 3rd Nexus up nice and early, immediately gets blown up. The Widow Mines didn't really do a whole lot, but they created the space that he needed. Even that Liberator ended up getting a couple of probes during one of those attacks too, which... and of course, I'm going to finish talking about all of those difficult things ShoWTimE had to deal with by saying his recovery was pretty fantastic. Despite that, his 3rd was up in time afterwards, and the fact that he got it to a 6-base situation where it's like, okay, well, I mined out my main and natural, and now I'm broke. That's why I'm gonna, that's how this falls apart. It's not bad form out of Tobias so far.
And one additional thing that I think made it difficult for ShoWTimE was that Maru, I think, played the map a bit better as far as a new map goes. So, it's been a few weeks since we had the new maps, and the ones we're seeing chosen here are the ones that were pretty quickly assessed to be the fun, good ones, right? But I think that towards the mid to end of that last game, it just became apparent that Maru was able to play that extremely large map a bit better. Again, ShoWTimE on the back foot, couldn't get the observers, couldn't get the momentum on the side of the map. But it's one of those things to consider that, there's probably only so many super late-game PVTs that ShoWTimE has had to play on Glittering Ashes, because it's still kind of a new map. And Maru was able to adapt very quickly, just played out in a way that we would expect him. Left, right, attack to the middle, plenty of good control. And ShoWTimE was probably a little more frazzled, a little more like, oh, that's where they'd come in from. Oh, that's where they'd come in from. Okay, that's a weak point in this map. Just felt like he wasn't quite as much on the ball. And again, this cheeky bunker, but this time the SCV is here for a bit of repair. It's basically dead, but not quite, and that's a bit more annoying for ShoWTimE.
I don't want to know what it feels like to be inside of a power suit that's at 1 hit point out of 45. Like, I don't know. I guess you don't really even have a visor anymore. You're just looking straight out at the laser beams, to quote everybody here today. So you start up a Stargate in the main base. It is definitely a really annoying thing, because it's not like he has to get the Nexus. Killing this pylon would be an absolute huge pain in the butt because it's just not supposed to happen.
Yeah, again, you can't build a shield battery that you would so easily be able to build if this was behind the minerals when you do this. That's the reason we see it. It's a bit of a new take on the way of doing this. I like that the ShoWTimE goes for a shield battery on the high ground. It turns out to be unnecessary, which is very unfortunate, but he does eventually clean this up. And yeah, into the Stargate. So
does the SCV get away too?
I think it did. Did it?
Wow. There really is no justice in this world.
Oh. So ShoWTimE has been playing around with Phoenix Charge. You always got to throw in that there could be Phoenix Colossus as well. Oh, and the Reaper, I think it got in enough to see that it's a Phoenix being built. It does, yeah. So now you have to determine, is it Phoenix Charge or Phoenix Colossus? And what I was just saying is that I think a lot of Protosses have been trying to bring back Phoenix Charge. So that's kind of what I'm expecting as well. The nice thing about this is not just the fact that it can sometimes get free victory. Sometimes the Terran is on autopilot and just kind of runs across the map into a bajillion zealots, and you're like, yeah, freebie. It's that even if it does go into a macro game, you kind of take away the power of some of these more aggressive Terrans. You're like, no mid-game attack for you. I have pretty fast charge. But that's only if he actually is going to go into it. One Phoenix, and then actually adds on that Oracle.
Yeah, and that's a really nice hit. Just takes some of the health off of it. 'Cause he's going to go Viking, Cyclone, and that makes the attempt, any attempt that he could try to do with the Phoenix to come in and be annoying, a little bit harder. So the Oracle is the follow-up, and we all know you can do a good amount of tracking on where these armies are, but the Cyclone Marine with the medevac, I think what he wanted to do is probably another mine drop, right? Like, that's super standard if it's not a Stargate opening.
Right.
But we've also seen a pretty decent amount of Terrans go for this, like, 2 Cyclone, 8 Marine, and actually get the second Viking, or a Liberator in this case, and just turn it into an early push, because it's kind of impossible out of this opening for the Protoss player to quickly have something like Blink or Charge as the follow-up, unless you're sprinting for it. But we know that he's trying to take this third base.
Even Oracle directly into Twilight Council can get tricky. So, the fact that he's gotten more than one Stargate unit absolutely doesn't even have a Twilight Council yet. Now, that doesn't mean that he's going to die immediately. Stargate players have got to get used to these types of pushes, but it's something that ShoWTimE really needs to figure out as fast as possible. Okay, you are going to do this push, trying to abuse the fact that I've gone for a Stargate. And, if he's not quick on the realization, then it could just be a game 2 bop. Certainly hope not, but it's happened.
The timing of this is pretty interesting, though. The Adept sees that both Cyclones and the Viking have come out, so the Oracles know they have carte blanche to go in and start wrecking these SCVs. And at the very least, getting as much damage as possible right now is going to be important. That Stasis Trap grabs both Cyclones. That's huge.
Yeah, that's really nice. That's so much extra time. He can't take on the army while the Stasis Trap is collecting those Cyclones, but it's still, again, so much time. The tank does come forward, though, but the shield batteries, plural, now finished up. Overcharge will be available. Again, no Twilight Council upgrades. We're not going to have Charge off table to help out, but eventually maybe ShoWTimE could just get it to enough actual plain gateway units. It does feel like it's not there. Maybe some, 6 Adepts shading on top of that tank would be a bit different. Maybe even dragging the Widow Mines, but this is going to be a brutal break. The Widow Mines even already collecting a lot of the Protoss army. Viking even landing.
I like
now,
that.
Trade of workers has occurred, one that still leaves ShoWTimE with this army. It's very questionable.
Well, hey, Revenge of the Phoenix. Liberator is going to siege up on the natural and get a few probes, but at the very least, those 2 Phoenix are able to remove that from the equation, and landing the Viking when it's all Stalkers is not a bad move either. Just getting that bonus mechanical damage, they're quite terrifying. But he kills 10 probes, runs back home. Don't think there's anything super bad about that. If you're ShoWTimE, you're happy that your third base didn't die this time around, and he did kill a pretty good amount of SCVs. So this isn't the, now they're both kind of even-ish and Mules put Maru ahead. No, ShoWTimE, he's up 13 workers, so he's got to be feeling good. He's got his third base. It didn't die. He still has the Oracle, so he can use Revelation to try and keep track of where Maru's army is. I'm sure we'll see him flying forward to try and tag that army at some point before it moves out. And his charge is coming through, so siege tanks themselves, that's going to give a great answer to those.
I was honestly really concerned there was more damage to be had at the third base. Maybe not for too many more seconds, 20 seconds max, but still. But no, actually pulling back, Maru realized that if he did overstay his welcome, then there might be a very difficult time escaping once Phoenix comes online. Phoenix number comes online, maybe Charge is finishing. He actually can't escape from that. That's one of the benefits of that composition. So he just pulls back. So that means that, at the end of the day, ShoWTimE's the one that grabs that 14 worker lead. Very comfy. for PVT. And even though his own army isn't the best, it's not like Maru is already finished Stim Combat Shields. It is finishing. We'll have another engagement soon enough. But now ShoWTimE has actually dedicated to that charged Phoenix I was talking about. So I don't know if this is how ShoWTimE expected this game to go. He wanted to sneak in these 2 Oracles, knowing this would be some of the potential plan of Maru, but it's worked out in his favor.
Yeah, and I really like the use of the Oracles in this game, because not only did they get a ton of damage done, they also saved that third base, I think, by getting the stasis on the Cyclones. If he's able to lock on and pick off just 1 or 2 more of those units, things can fall apart quickly. The random mine, though, well, it's a good unit.
It's sometimes really good in there.
The less sense the position makes, the more sense it makes.
The second Oracle is going to survive. Still very, very, very useful for the Revelations, figuring out where everything is.
I think he sees this stasis trap,
did.
too. Threading the needle on this one.
Well,
the Phoenix are just a teeny bit out of position. It's all Marines in here, so if he's able to unload, he can do something, and it's in a choke as well against where these Zealots got warped in.
Oh, the Phoenix just a smidge out of position. 2, 3 of them getting taken down. The rest of the army has to come in here. I mean, this is such a drastic difference from with the Phoenix. We're just in the exact right place. Then there's no concern, really, from ShoWTimE. Maru just abandoned ship and the whole idea, and it's back to just tackling the engagement in front of your base, not in your base. But ShoWTimE does handle it. It's going to come back down here and have to save maybe the other gateway, maybe the robo, but he will save them. And he's going to push this back. Maru, again, if he does retreat, he might have difficulty doing it, so best be doing it quickly. And he does go back home with everything. Now, Ghosts are on the way, however. That does take down the army of ShoWTimE, but he's already on his way to a Colossus transition.
I actually really like the timing of going into the Ghosts here, mostly because he threw away a lot of units to do what he just did. And it's like, yeah, he got some probes, killed some of the Zealots, got some of the Phoenix, but ShoWTimE, he's ahead in supply. He has a big army. That's a huge army. He's got a crazy number of Zealots, and my fear starts to become, like, if he overextends a bit there, and then ShoWTimE's able to get back on him, or if he's able to hit a flank on this siege towards the third that's coming, then the counterattack opportunity towards the third becomes really, really big. So getting into Ghost this quickly is great, because, I mean, 1 EMP in center massive Zealots is going to remove like 700 shields.
Right.
So you have a lot of ways to deal with this kind of mass gateway style.
If the Protoss is successful in their transition, though, what can happen is that they have enough robo units, so again, Colossus and Disruptors, to draw a line in the sand that the Terran really has to do a lot of things to work around. And then they use their mass amount of Zealots, start actually splitting them up and going for humongous run-bys of 10 to even 15 Zealots. But that's a bit in the future. Again, the transition has to be successful. Raven comes in, helps out by taking out one of the Colossus for now. Pop off on all of the Zealots. An EMP also coming down, but it looks like maybe there's just too much here as the Protoss does retain the Archons, the Colossus, and just enough fodder to protect them. Also saves the Nexus. And now here's that point. I called it successful. ShoWTimE lived, and now we can maybe set up some run-bys, and all of his upgrades are going to be finishing as well.
Yeah, I think the key takeaways there, like you were saying, Zombie Grub, the tech units, the power units are still up. A lot of Zealots died in the making of that short clip, but he was able to keep the base alive. The economy is still growing, and at this point, even though the supply is a little bit closer, ShoWTimE's supply is more valuable than it was before that battle by keeping those important units up, and we can be sure to expect some more Zealot harass and whatnot later on. But that line in the sand that you were talking about is about to be drawn as the Disruptors are coming out. The Colossi have range now, and +2 attack, of course, is going to make that AoE damage so devastating. That Cyclone just can't look away from its last target. One of my favorite little derps those guys do.
I was checking out the graphs, and the income has been favorable to ShoWTimE most of the time. But I looked at the army, and I just love the dip of the Zealots dying. That's what happened there. But still, again, retaining all those expensive units. So now we get to go into a bit more of that mid to late game, where this is, I think, absolutely a game that was more back and forth, that ShoWTimE can feel more confident in, because that last one, he lost so much so soon that it really was just a, I guess, proof of his confidence and ability to stay calm that gave him a good-looking game for Game 1. Game 2 is looking better. He's not actually in this more difficult position. Maybe even could afford some more observers around the map, which was a problem, just finding out where he's going. But even if he can't do that, he's got the Revelation, the Oracle's still alive, and it's a very familiar map. So I think it's going to be a little less of the surprise run-bys. I'm going to kill all your Disruptors. I'm going to kill all your Nexus. I think ShoWTimE should be relatively safe on these 4 bases. Grabbing a 5th, that's always a bit more difficult as Maru is roaming around. I'm really surprised by this. Already going into the fleet beacon, a lot of Protosses consider this transition to be very difficult and perhaps not even worth it in some games, but ShoWTimE's diving right toward it.
Yeah, it's the age-old conundrum of, well, there are some even further high up the tech tree units that you can get that are actually strong. They become even stronger when the Terran's army is like too balanced out. You know, if you don't have a lot of Marines, we've seen players even in the European segment of getting into this tournament in the first place catch some top Terrans off guard. Guys like Clem and take those maps just off of saying, well, you actually don't have enough Marines with your army to deal with the carrier transition or Tempest to force them to come in and fight and try to dive those disruptors. But Maru, at the same time, is getting his own air upgrades, moving into that +3 Liberator range. So if he gives ShoWTimE, I want to know what exactly he's going to try and get out of those Stargates down the line, because he still has a lot of his supply available, but he's going to use those disruptors, pushes some of the bio back. The EMP's pretty gnarly out of Maru so far.
Yeah, I mean, that was a really wide concave there from Maru. Obviously, as he chases, it gets a little more dangerous, but a lot of the disruptors had already used their shots. So that was a little bit scary for both parties, honestly. I'm with you. I think that actually pacing-wise, ShoWTimE is showing, I suppose, maturity is what I'm going to use. If he had been able to stick around a bit longer there and just continued bullying Maru, and then suddenly he shows up with Tempest or carriers, and he is choosing carriers, that's actually Maru probably just being gobsmacked. Like, oh, shoot, like, you're already at that point, and I'm being slightly contained. That's a problem. But now as Maru does push away ShoWTimE, there's a little more flexibility. He can kind of work around these capital ships that are also very slow. They're going to slow the game down a little bit, and it's more of that slow positional game for both parties because, of course, Maru is going into Liberators.
Yeah, and the Liberators will actually still have great utility against the carriers down the line, whether it's through the splash damage, getting the interceptors. They're one of those units where we talk about, we make jokes about how little damage the Liberators do, but because of how much the interceptors spread out, they can do a lot of work. Speaking of spreading out, yeah, sorry, that Archon is dummy thick. He can't quite get out of there. It's force supply gone forever.
Yeah, it's kind of useful, man. I don't know if he even notices. I don't think it's going to be what makes or break this game. So a lot more to be added in than just a single Archon. But we actually have a little bit of a dance going on. Disruptors shooting their shots, not finding too big of connections, and now out of ammo. Nope, one more was there, actually. But the rest of the army of the Protoss had come forward, including now the carriers. There are some Vikings in Maru's army, but I think even he was a little surprised that they're already ready to go, even have an upgrade on them. So he's going to pull back and collect himself. But this is something that the desk brought up. Maru is actually still very comfortable in this position. He didn't get to drop everywhere. He didn't get to be the aggressor. But this is actually fine for him, too. He can adapt to a game like this very well.
8 Dark Templar just get warped in. We'll keep our eyes on where they are headed. Does he have Shadow Stride? Yes. So the Blink is available to dive this planetary fortress if necessary. And he sees those carriers like you were discussing, continues to raise the Viking count, but continues to also add those Liberators. That's going to be huge. Now there's the Blink. 1, 2, and very low. SCV's not able to get the wraparound to save it in time, and now they will begin to die. The Liberators are going to try and siege, cover the ground so that these Vikings have space to go after the carriers. There's no storm, so just about almost gets one. And the Stalkers are able to shave off a decent bit of them, so not too shabby. ShoWTimE picks off a base, trades some of the health on one of his carriers for a few Vikings. He's going to break those rocks, and I don't think he needs to force a fight here, but as that carrier count continues to rise, things get real funky. I love that he's getting this many Liberators, though. I feel like it's a trap a lot of Terrans fall into, where they try to go like just Giga Vikings, and then they end up realizing, oh wait, Vikings dying like 3 shots to half of these units. No, kill the interceptors. Double down on utilizing that and just turning them into dead supply.
It's been a while since we've seen a true late game PvT. Usually more so what happens, the Terran is way too dedicated on bio and is very late to the Liberator transition, so they die in other ways. Or alternatively, the Protoss is too fast on their carrier transition, can't survive the onslaught, and then dies before then as well. So it's kind of cool seeing an actual, even super late game, and we'll see if they both approach it. They're probably maybe a bit out of practice, not usually what happens in TVP, but it does occasionally. So ShoWTimE is going to be looking up for openings where Liberators aren't already sieged up, where Vikings are a little late to the party, and then maybe you can crack a couple of these tanks, a couple of the missile turrets as well, and really start to I guess, dig in a little bit. But it's really difficult to actually kill the Terran here. Maru was not that far behind in the air transition. I'm surprised that ShoWTimE's actually going to go for this. 2 Liberators still sieged up, doing massive amounts of damage. That was not it.
Liberators are +2 attack, of course. 2-shot the Stalkers, a very important upgrade to have. So kills a tremendous amount of supply. Now Maru's scanning around the map. He's like, okay, I see. You're taking some bases. You're taking some bases. Of course, like you were saying, the power dynamic has shifted. Maru is on the defensive, but of course, we're talking about defense. If the whole army's there and you've got +2 ranged Liberators and Vikings and Ghosts, it's pretty hard to crack the Terran Turtle in these types of situations, but there does need to be an end game for Maru. So ShoWTimE either needs to avoid giving up too much so that Maru can just come out in one punch and kill him, or needs to find a way to force one of these big mistakes. So a lot of the army headed towards that southeast expansion. He's going to go for the recall. Is this going to be everything? Liberators sieged up in the top right, but that Phoenix, the hero Phoenix that we've talked about all day, still able to get a little bit more work done.
Yeah, just the one Phoenix, though. The Oracle has died off. No observers either. Some of these random Wintermines have been very bothersome as well. ShoWTimE, probably not used to a Terran who's so committed to the turtle. Soul, actually, or Spirit now, I guess, can kind of be that guy sometimes. But Maru is just, always leading the charge for whatever Terran can do.
This is the correct way to do it, though. You know, I feel like it becomes almost a misconception. It's like the Terran has to always be out on the map attacking. Protoss bleeds a lot of resources. Look at ShoWTimE's mineral bank, right? If you're adding all these cannons, you're burning these interceptors every fight. That's chewing into that bank. It hurts the money a lot. He says, I'm content to just EMP you. And once you EMP, that means the Liberators are one-shotting the Stalkers, too. So the damage output is just insane. And he's basically saying, yeah, ShoWTimE, try to kill me. Try to finish this game off. You're totally broke. You have no money left. And as though he has all these bases, he's got all these tools that he can use, but he's it's almost like you're just trying to bait the Protoss into attacking into you, and meanwhile he's getting high-sec auto-tracking for extra missile turret and planetary range. Building armor is just going to make everything harder to destroy. And Ghost Cloak, which always good.
Yeah, I guarantee worse Terrans have already taken a bit of a loss here or there. Lost a planetary, had to do a very slow retake kind of thing, and it's just not the case for Maru, who's been very content on 5 bases. Maybe reaching towards a 6th will be difficult, but I think that ShoWTimE does need to push the idea of being a Zerg a little bit here. He needs to take the map and really increase his bank, because he's the one that's going to be trading much, much worse. And he's not trying to go for a capital ship versus capital ship situation here. He's not going all in on Tempest carrier, so it is going to be a lot of replacing gateway units on the ground and trying to find Maru out of position, which can just not happen so far.
Now we have another big round of DTs getting warped in. I do believe a Prism tried to slip around towards the main and got popped. What's the resources lost look like right now? Maru has to be in a pretty good spot there. Yeah, that's about what I expected. About almost a 10,000 total resource difference between the two. So ShoWTimE's bleeding out a lot to make this happen. He blinks a ton of DTs onto these Marauders. It looks very cool. Costs a lot too, though.
You have to actually get all the DTs blinking in us around. Like, only partially, and they slip out of there, and the DTs, they feel, useless. They're not supposed to be head-on attackers, after all, even though they sometimes can be. So that's a funny investment, basically. It's not a terrible idea, to be clear. It just is really a big investment for a guy who's not yet at that very comfortable bank. Still trying to find some damage. I'm sure he also intended to use these DTs, not just for defense, but also for offense. But you have to have so many to crack a planetary with upgrades protected by Liberators. You have to have so many DTs, and even then it might not be worth it. It just costs you so much. And here's that situation I'm talking about. Yeah, the planetary might go down. It will. But it's still going to cost him perhaps quite a bit. Well, actually, if he just evacuates immediately, that's not bad.
Yeah, he's pushing in and creating some soft points. It's very similar to watching someone try to break down a mech player. And obviously, Bio, you have a little bit of easier time going back between your bases, but you're still limited by these slow, powerful tech units. Some of the Ghosts get into a dropship and they get blown up. The rest of them, well, they die on the ground. And just 2 of them, I think, get saved. So Maru loses some of his nice units. This is where ShoWTimE started to take a little bit better trades. I think that slowly helps start to even this out. The ranged Liberators are always a huge threat, though. Blinks in to get 1 or 2, but that tank in the back doing a great job of covering. And it's just unbelievable amounts of patience from Maru. It's not like he's doing nothing, but if he tries to leave his base and move out and gets caught on one of these sides, I mean, ShoWTimE, this little hit squad could take down 1 or 2 command centers easily on their own. So you need to keep things close to the chest. You need to just say, hey, Protoss is going to throw away thousands of resources on DT harass. I need to let him do that and just not let him actually kill all my stuff.
Yeah, that's really the trick, though, isn't it? You know, you think you might have enough for defense, and suddenly ShoWTimE accurately reads, I can blink into this, I can go other Liberators, and that was what he was depending on, is a Liberator planetary defense. That actually gets cracked on the left side, right side, it's all about the DTs. They're getting EMP'd, though, and they're pretty terrible. Once they get EMP'd, go back to the shield bed to try and recharge, but ultimately gonna have to give up this base. I think both of them kind of realize a bit more about that ground army, Maru included, so he's going for a bit of trades here, base for a base. And things will inevitably calm down. We're not going to get any base races yet. I do think both of them are really correcting things on the fly. They're both figuring out what game the other one wants to play and is trying to play it the best. I really got to give some props for ShoWTimE. I thought the first time when he dived in and did a pretty terrible job of it, kind of like reposition himself on the camera, right? He was like, oh, I'm not sure about this. I was worried about his mentality, but I think he's thinking back to so many late games on like Eternal Empire, you know, years ago at this point, where he has played a similar situation and he's learned a lot from it.
The wild thing is that at the end of all of that, this last 7-minute standoff we've basically been in, ShoWTimE is down a couple of those bases that he had mining. He's mining out on the bases that he's already had for a while. And Maru, he takes one of those, he takes that fresh base in the bottom right. He's like, okay, this is going to fuel the next couple of minutes of the game for me. And as long as I can continue to trade and get these big unit pickoffs and then just leapfrog my way very slowly as I take new bases, he can continue to fund the war effort and try to, you know, just pressure ShoWTimE out economically. But he did get that top left nexus, and he's actually taking the top left center one as well. Really good play out of both of them. This Stalker Blink, a bit adventurous, though, is going to eat some shots with the Disruptor on the tail end. Gets a couple nice hits. Kills about 7 or so of the Ghosts. Really nice grabs there. And Maru, well, but how about this? We got a hell of a game on our hands here, don't we, Zombie Girl?
Hell yeah, we do. And ShoWTimE might actually be doing it here. Although, yeah, that does get the planetary. That was one of those really costly DT investments I was bringing up earlier. Didn't realize that there was actually a sizable army down behind that planetary. Bit of an overextension from ShoWTimE, but still grabbing these bases, reducing Maru's bank is big, but ShoWTimE needs to make sure not to over-dedicate. It's not like he has 5,000, and he is starting to lose some of these very expensive units. I think what he was thinking for that last engagement, too, was that Maru was so choked in, Disruptors might have gotten even better hits, but not able to take down those last Liberators. Cost him quite a bit. Needs to always be careful about that. Both of them really have to be careful. You know, we're in 2,000 atmospheres, one of the biggest maps as far as the amount of bases that are available, especially these half bases. One of these is actually a half base with Rich Vespian. And we still actually have not gotten to the point, 25, 26 minutes in, where all of these bases have been mined. There's a lot of mining left over, and it's going to be a war of attrition as the game goes on. But speaking of mining, 16 SCVs go down. Fresh command center going to be an easy pick there as well. But again, a base for a base as Maru charges up to the top left, takes down the recall opportunity with an EMP. He's going to take down probes as well. A real trade going on here. And what is going to be the response of ShoWTimE? He does have the recall, but he's going to make sure
get the bottom
right.
Dies. He did fly to command center to the southeast expansion, was trying to grab that, but this is where the money starts to get tight, and that cost effectiveness that we've been discussing all game long becomes so important. With a 12,000 resource difference, Maru's got still a little bit more to work with. It's been hard to take those bases, but like you said, Zombie Grub, he hasn't actually been able to mine them out. And when you're playing Terran, all you need to do is take that base for about 2 minutes. Even if it gets killed, you drop 10 mules on that bad boy. You've got enough money to play the game. You got enough quarters to stay at the arcade cabinet for about a couple hours.
Yeah, you do. Although in this particular situation, gas is also an issue for Maru. He's not being able to take too many new gas geysers, and he is still affording very expensive units, Liberators, Ghosts, Medivacs even, was something that he's had to also account for. We see him occasionally producing more as he realizes that's still an important factor in this game. It does feel like Maru is getting a bit close to the point, not of all-inning, but more of the objective here is to get the Liberators across the map, right? It's not about defending and turtling with those Liberators, 2 here, 3 there. No, it's about going through the middle of the map, and this is now something that ShoWTimE needs to just delay. If these Liberators siege up close to his production, well, he have the same problem that a Terran does. Like, if his production's just gone, okay, that's still a problem. So he's even starting to get Tempest again, which I think is very necessary.
Yeah.
Liberators have become one of the scariest things as they move across the map, actually going to retreat. I guess Maru is just looking to get a monkey off his back for a little while and is hoping to find another base before he really commits.
Yeah, the amount of backstab counter harass that ShoWTimE has done has been incredible in this game. A lot of these units, like we've talked about, they're expensive, sure, but he's done what he's needed to do for the most part, because it really is just such a difficult situation if Maru's able to siege up outside of your base.
Yeah.
You have to be counterattacking. You have to pull the Terran home. It's the same kind of conversation we were having before when we were talking about Probe and maybe if you would use Prisms. Comes in, blinks for the Liberators. That EMP causes quite a few of the Stalkers to get popped. And even though there are Tempests coming out, like you said, there's so many Vikings, it's going to be quite challenging. Maru is starting to encroach upon the last vestige of fresh economy in the northwest corner of this map. Disruptors are doing everything they can, but this bio's splitting pretty decently thus far. Takes a couple more chunks out, but now the Liberators have sieged the front line. That's going to expose those two top left bases to a little bit of a split off if he just tries to push in towards them.
That was so messy, but it's a good thing that Maru had so much room to actually do those splits. That could have gone so much worse for the Terran, but as it is it enough for him? It's done a tremendous amount of damage to ShoWTimE's army, but these Tempests coming in absolutely clutch. The thing was, as Maru was engaging and trying to reposition his Liberators, he was slowly getting them bled off. The Stalkers were occasionally destroying them, meaning that there wasn't enough anti-air to tackle the Tempest that Maru probably was not really expecting. But you said it, there was the attack there meant that there was two bases that ShoWTimE was going to lose, which he desperately needs and cannot save them. But if he can take a good enough fight, then maybe it's still in ShoWTimE's favor. Once again, forced to retreat in this area. He's going to lose all of the Disruptors this time around. Not a single one left over for a shot. It's down to Gateways and Tempests. And ShoWTimE is still just going for harassment.
And he's
going to pull back and still do so much damage.
Striking back, but he got rid of the Liberators. Wildly enough, that opens the door on the Gateway units to actually fight head-to-head with the bio. These DTs just barely going to try to blink away. Of course, there is so many orbital commands for Maru. He's been able to keep those scans rolling, but the money, the income, both players, I think those first three bases totally gone. It's like income advantage very close, but the actual total income itself on both sides is now quite low.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. ShoWTimE's not really mining with all 39 probes. Did the top left survive? Oh, it didn't die. It went down into the red, didn't die. That's actually pretty big. ShoWTimE still has all these capitals with the Tempest. They're slow. They don't really deal, I guess, like a tremendous amount of damage, not very fast shooters,
that's
right?
actually insane, too.
But they are extremely helpful. When there's no Vikings in the air, chasing down these Tempests now becomes a real issue for Maru. And yeah, that top left base, that actually might be a big mistake for Maru.
ShoWTimE is playing out of his mind. If you told me that this was Maru versus Stats, I'd be like, damn, this is some good Korean PvT. But the way that Maru played against Cyril, we expected him to be kicking some serious butt, but oh my god, ShoWTimE has absolutely taken him to the limit. As soon as that army tries to move out towards that northwest base that we were discussing, DT is in for a bit more damage. If he's able to blink that one out, that'll be huge. Some Zealots do get caught trying to be rallied outside, but he says, okay, if you're going to have everything over there, it's time for me to push out and try to get a little bit more done. A nuclear warhead has been called down on the ramp. Maru's able to hit this and be huge. Okay, cancels it, steps out. Says it's not worth losing the ghost. Must cancel that and just reposition.
Oh, he's had that nuke forever. I was like, what if it came down to this one nuke? That'd be so sick. But no, just forced to cost-benefit analysis very quickly. Says, I'm going to leave the ghost. I think the nuke's not going to help me so much.
The ghost costs more than the nuke,
Does?
so that's a fair observation.
Yeah, this is an absolutely sick game. I still don't really know how it's going to go because it feels like all that has to happen for Maru to win is for ShoWTimE to be surrounded. Tempest can't retreat. Disruptors don't get good shots. And then there's still probably enough anti-air, although we're not, again, talking about Vikings, rather Marines and Ghosts, to take down the Tempest. But it's a bit what if. Maru does have more supply. That's about all in army as well. They both been reduced down to sub 20 workers. But is it good enough supply? Is it going to tackle the Disruptors who have... the Disruptors have so much potential. Even the Tempest doing there we have it. No, Maru is paying attention. But there's only so many Disruptors in this army. One finally finds a connection. Next one going to find a couple more Marauders. But the army of Maru is collapsing in. It's going to find the Disruptors. Can it find the Tempest as well? A couple of them starting to go down to shield batteries. Desperately trying to hold on. Disruptor from the left side. Looking for the perfect shot. Finds a a pretty good one, but ShoWTimE is starting to run low on units. The Tempest weren't pulled back. They weren't migrated into the dead zone. And Maru takes the 2-0.